Gather round, dear viewers, and lend me your ears. I've got some quick rules before we shift gears. If you've got something crucial and need interaction, just start with a cue for a swift, snappy reaction. Now, if you're a newbie and want a grand greeting, type N at the start and we'll make it heartwarming and fleeting. So cue for questions. N if you're new. Now let's get this broadcast rolling. It's all up to you.
Her name is Dora, Luisa. Okay, there's a story behind Dora. Two friends had birthdays recently, and you know, in the afternoons when I'm done with work, I eat my brownie, and I was high as a kite the other day. Yes, guilty as charged. And I'm thinking, what kind of birthday greetings can I have for my friends? And I made them little birthday poems, and I used Dora. And I figured, well, I'm liking Dora. So Dora may become a fixture of Coffee and Headlines, unless you think, Paco, you know, no, don't bring Dora to the table. But I have plans for Dora. She may be as successful as PETA, my Paco's inflatable digital assistant, or maybe not. Maybe I'm just becoming too weird. I mean, I'm 62. What do you expect? Anyhow, enough about you. Now let's talk about me. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee and Headlines. Today, I'm looking forward to our connection because we are going to react to an interesting article that I found. And the name of the article is, where did I put it? Where did it go? Hold on just a second. This is an article that I found called 10 Things Gringos Do That Upset Mexicans and How to Avoid Them. Yes, this is going to be part of our content today, and we'll have what I hope will be a lively discussion, not only on 10 things gringos do that upset Mexicans and how to avoid them, but also it's only fair to flip the coin and talk about 10 things or things that Mexicans do that annoys English-speaking folk. And we won't take offense. We will try to be kind in our remarks and be objective and learn from the experience. But before we go there, today is, yes, I giggle like a schoolgirl. I know. And I just love giggling like a schoolgirl. It's part of my personality. What can I say? Anyhow, it is June 6th. It's Thursday. I have a lot of things to go through. Well, actually, I have a lot of shit to do before I finish my music appreciation presentation for this afternoon. So let us just get started with everything we have planned for today, starting with this. We recently announced that the improvement along Medina Ascencio's northbound lateral have begun to approach the stadium, and we can see in this image how the pavement across from Soriana has been removed. And what we learned this morning is that authorities have announced that it will take approximately 150 days, or almost 4 months, to complete this stretch of the project all the way to the Sheraton. Interesting statement, because we know that the project ends at the stadium, which is also across from the Sheraton. So we don't know if that will be the end of the project or if the lateral will be extended somehow. And I'm thinking primarily about the wants and the needs of cyclists. But we'll have to wait and see. What I know is that through the course of the rain season this year, there's going to be a lot of mud and a lot of traffic in this part of town. Now, I have to show you this because this is totally unprecedented. Luis Munguia, who is our virtual new mayor, and I say virtual because the results won't be confirmed just yet, but we all know he's the new guy, unless something really crazy happened. Anyhow, this is unprecedented. One of the first things that Luis Munguia from the Green Party, or the Partido Verde, ordered people to do, his team, was to remove all his electoral campaign propaganda from the different neighborhoods of Puerto Vallarta. That's right. We know that political candidates plaster our city with banners, and they paint walls, and they do this, that, and the other, and by law they are requested to remove them, but we don't ever read or know or hear that they actually do this, whether they do it or not. So I think it is quite telling that one of the first things that Munguia ordered his staff to do is, we made a mess around the city, go clean after that mess. So I hope that this is a good sign for things to come to Puerto Vallarta during this new administration. In fact, according to this other article published by Mexico City's Excelsior, the Partido Verde has become the second strongest political force, the second political party with most representation in both local and federal Congress, next to the Morena party, of course. So it'll be interesting to see how the Partido Verde continues to become more powerful in Mexico's governance in general. Of course, locally, the dust continues to settle. And as far as the elections are concerned, the state federal college has announced that it won't be until Saturday that we learn the definitive results of the local elections. So even though we know, or we are pretty certain, that Munguia will be our next mayor, this will not be confirmed until Saturday. So we're going to hold on to our comments on the deputies and the mayor and this, that, and the other until then. And now the weather, but before the weather, one final look at this not so subtle nudge for you to join me this afternoon in my music appreciation presentation. Take a look. Guess what? I asked artificial intelligence to name the most important classical music masterworks, and artificial intelligence delivered. In my next music appreciation presentation, we will dive into timeless masterpieces recommended by ChatGPT. From Beethoven's majestic symphonies to Vivaldi's enchanting concertos, we will uncover the stories behind these beloved compositions and explore their enduring appeal. Whether you are a seasoned aficionado or new to classical music, this event promises to ignite your passion and deepen your appreciation for the timeless beauty of these musical treasures. Our meeting will be, of course, this coming Thursday on June 6 at 5 p.m. at the air-conditioned Joint Boutique Hotel and Co-work. Tickets are already on sale at the hotel's reception desk. I hope to see you there. Oh, where is my my weather? I can see my weather. Why can't my program see my weather? Ah, I see what's going on. There you go. Woohoo! The sun is out. Now I can incinerate meat bags with my giant magnifying lens, says Snarky Weatherman. Today we are enjoying 28 degrees. Oh, that's cold. Well, not cold, but you know what I mean. 28 is less than 31. 28 degrees, humidity is at 70, and our weather forecast. Oh, sorry, hate it when I pushed the wrong button. Our weather forecast says that we're going to have a humid day with clear skies, a high of 30 and a low of 22. And then on tomorrow, humid with overcast skies plus some patches of sun shining through, a high of 32 and a low of 24. Then on Saturday, a humid day with mostly clear skies, but a few clouds may be wandering around. We'll have a high temperature of 31 and a low temperature of 25. In other news, check this photograph out. You are looking at President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum and her husband, and his name, of course, is Jesus, and his last name is Tarriba, Jesus Maria Tarriba. He is our first caballero, our Primer Caballero, or first gentleman in Mexico's presidential history. The title Primera Dama, or First Lady, is not an official one in Mexico. So there has been speculation as to whether he will go by Primer Caballero and whether he will get involved in specific causes or organizations or protocol activities as First Ladies traditionally have in the past. He is a scientist, by the way, in case you are wondering. And I guess we will find out more about this as we move forward. And also, let me tell you that yesterday we had such a wonderful time getting to know our friend Dale better in our 12th episode of The Spotlight. I can't believe we've been going at this for 12 episodes. Of course, we know Dale from her constant work promoting crocheting and knitting and all the volunteer work that she does. And of course, she was at the Spotlight yesterday to promote the fact that Saturday is Worldwide Knit in Public Day. And there's going to be an event on Saturday morning at La Isla Rio Cuales. So it was really, really fun to get to know Dale better than we did before. And of course, I have to share this anecdote. Prior to the interview, I asked her if she wanted to talk about all her other volunteering pursuits, and she says, no, let me focus on the knitting and the knitting group. But then she opened up like a book, and she started telling amazing stories. And even though she says to me that volunteering is engraved in her, the way she is, I asked her a question, and because I am firmly convinced that there are a lot of people spending way too much time going from happy hour to happy hour that would probably have more fulfilling days and more overall happiness if they found a pursuit, a goal. I could be wrong. Maybe it's idealistic for me to think this way, but I applaud the fact that Dale fills her life and her livelihood with so many heartwarming missions. What a pleasure to have her on the Spotlight. And of course, we already know at least one or two of the people that are going to join us next week in the Spotlight. We will hear from Brothers Lam and Sean Yuen, who opened a holistic clinic in Puerto Vallarta called Satisana. They had been living their lives as digital nomads for 10 years before settling in Puerto Vallarta. Their mission is to awaken our mindfulness to see the roots of our issues and address them through a variety of alternative treatments and therapies. So I'm very much looking forward already to the next edition of the Spotlight, which will be this coming Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Of course, today in the show notes, we will publish the new watch links and also the registration link should somebody else wish to join the Spotlight to tell us either about an upcoming event or an interesting product or service that we may want to know more about. And last for today, again, no, not that. Let's move on to the next image. I spotted this article on Mexico News Daily. It was published yesterday, and of course, the title got to me immediately, and I couldn't resist reading it. And when I read it, I figured how fun it's going to be to bring this up in conversation today and react to it. Let me put it up on my, oh, there it is. It's already on my screen. This was written by Bethany Platanella, who we learn at the bottom is a travel planner and lifestyle writer based in Mexico City. She lives for the dopamine hit that comes directly after booking a plane ticket, exploring local markets, practicing yoga, and munching on fresh tortillas. There you go. So I like this first and foremost because, first of all, it takes a fair amount of self-awareness in my book to write this from an American point of view. And this is reflecting on her writing. Let me just switch gears here. We want to show that. That's what I want to show on this screen. She starts by saying, we're all annoying in our own way. And oftentimes those traits span an entire nationality. And she says, I should know I'm American. So this is going to be an interesting thing. And then she goes on to say, I'm happy to say that since moving to Mexico City, I've found out that we aren't the only deplorables, at least here in Mexico. And then she writes in parentheses, I'm talking to you Canadians, Brits, and Aussies. So she says, here are the top 10 coupled with my personal interpretation of what we're doing wrong. And of course, me being Mexican, I have to have a comment on this. And she starts by saying, expect English everywhere. And she goes on by saying, it's true that Mexico City restaurants are handling out English menus to Mexican patrons, but much to their chagrin. It's a double-edged sword. It's a testament to the country's accommodation of outsiders, but it's also preventing English-speaking expats from immersing themselves in the language and therefore learning it. And I think there's a lot to be said about this. Here in Puerto Vallarta, of course, we spoil our tourists rotten by constantly speaking in English. And I've always been of the opinion that if you, as an English-speaking person, expect that to be the case wherever you travel through Mexico, you're going to be very disappointed. So it helps to know a little bit of the language. It helps when you travel to know that you can always travel with a Spanish-speaking person and have a clearer, broader expectation of what is out there. Then there's another one that says gringos refuse to drink filtered water because it could make you fall victim to Moctezuma's rite of passage. And I don't know what to say about that. I don't know that that Americans don't drink filtered water as opposed to bottled water. That doesn't really offend me or upset me in any way. I mean, if you go somewhere and you choose to drink whatever you choose to drink, that's your choice. This one is interesting. Americans talk about how cheap everything is. This has come up before on Mexico News Daily. Even if it is cheap compared to your home country, it is not cheap compared to Mexico's average salary. Delight in the money that you're saving, but keep it to yourself. There is some truth to that. Because if something is less expensive to you in Mexico, for us Mexican nationals, it's not necessarily equally less expensive. So to constantly hear from English speaking folk, oh, everything's so inexpensive here, it does grate a little bit because the pay rate is different. So her call for people to be mindful of this is totally, I can certainly appreciate that. Then she talks about guilt payments and over tipping. If your housekeeping gives you a rate, that's the rate you should pay. Don't double it because you think it's too low, because it throws off the pay scale for Mexicans who might not be making the same salary you're raking in from a San Francisco based tech giant. And this also goes for tipping. She does say that the standard is 10 to 15%. Personally, I tend to tip 20%. I don't think that is over tipping, but I could be wrong of that. I think it is not as offensive as under tipping. And yes, there are a number of people that under tip just because they don't understand the rate exchange. So I think a good question to ask here is, and ask of Mexican nationals, what is what should I tip in this circumstance? Um, then she says, not eating like a Mexican, and she's not talking about specific meals. She talks about Mexico's traditional dining schedule. She says gringos eat lunch at about 1 p.m. and dinner around 7, whereas Mexicans eat lunch around 2 p.m. and dinner around 8 p.m. This means that when a Mexican couple shows up for a date night at 8:15 p.m., there are no tables available. Um, I think people should be allowed to have dinner whenever they want, but it is worth mentioning that it may uh, take you by surprise if you are invited by a dinner that is going to consist of primarily Mexican folk, and the dinner doesn't start until 8. I personally like to eat earlier because dinner could be a heavy meal and my digestive system is just not up to par anymore. Um, oh, I was so guilty of this when I first came back to Mexico, crossing the street like a gringo. And this is important. In the United States, there's a very specific pedestrian culture that doesn't exist in Mexico. In the United States, cars will yield and will stop for pedestrians no matter what. It is quite engraved in the culture. Here in Mexico, it's not that way. And the same thing happens with bicycle riders. So when you're crossing the streets, do not cross the streets assuming that the cars are going to stop for you. They may screech, they may honk, and they may be upset, and that's just because we cross the street differently. Pedestrians don't have that much power crossing the streets in Mexico as they do in the United States. Then this is an interesting one. I'm going to read it complete. She calls this lack of formalities, and she says it's common in the United States to skip conversation openers in the interest of saving time and getting to the point. In many cases, this is a glorious way of doing business, but that's not how it works here, especially when interacting with someone for the first time. Take 5 minutes to be Mexican and break the ice. I can relate to this as a Mexican national. For me, it's not so much about breaking the ice. To me, that combines with this assumption that we're going to speak English no matter what. And if there's something that really annoys me is when somebody just reaches out to me and says to me in English, "Hey, is this a pepper shaker?" Uh, and assuming that A, I speak your language, B, I want to talk to you, and C, that I understand what you're saying. So she calls this lack of formality or cutting to the chase. I don't know. I personally don't react well to people that just start talking to me in a language that is not my own. Maybe that's just because I'm old and cranky, but that's just me. But it is important to be mindful of this difference. I completely agree on this one. Uh, oh dear. Some things. This is interesting too. Asking about your safety everywhere you go. Parts of Mexico aren't safe. Parts of Australia aren't safe. Parts of London aren't safe. Safety is an issue everywhere. Do your own research, and if you're really unsure, ask a friend if they've ever driven on their own to Veracruz because you're thinking about doing just that, and you'll get the answer you're looking for. And I can see that. It's very different to ask how safe it is to go to PTL at night than to ask, have you ever gone to PTL at night? What was your experience like? There is something to be said about this, not paranoia, but this obsession on safety or lack of thereof that a lot of Americans seem to have when it comes to coming to Mexico and spending time here. Um, then she says, um, you don't look Mexican. This is a very delicate territory. There has been a long held belief that Mexicans look a certain way, work in certain industries, and have a certain style. This is particularly rampant in the United States. As for a country that is so sensitive to class, a statement like this can be really offensive, especially when coming from an American. Oh my God, this is so true. Mexico, us Mexicans, are the result of so much race mixture, just like any culture out there. So for an American to think that a blonde Mexican doesn't look Mexican is is not realistic, and it can definitely be offensive. I don't think there are people that look like people, and I think it is very, very dangerous to think that way. Um, Mexicans don't eat burritos. Uh, I don't know about that. Uh, well, let me tell you what she says. Mexicans don't eat burritos, which I disagree. We eat burritos and we love them. But this says this isn't true everywhere. Obviously, the seafood joint up the street from my apartment has a pretty delicious seafood burrito on the menu. If you've flown into Puerto Vallarta, you probably filled up on a famous smoked marlin burrito at Tacon de Marlin. What is meant by burrito in this case is a lack of research or curiosity about true Mexican culture. Mexico is mole, it's Tenochtitlan, it's Quetzalcoatl, it's Catholicism, it's copal, it's mariachi, it's agave. This country is so rich beyond the edges of a jack cheese and ground beef burrito from Chipotle. Mexico is simply amazing. And I have to totally agree with this because I do think that a lot of, and we've talked about this before here at Coffee and Headlines, a lot of foreigners come here thinking that Mexican food is just tacos and enchiladas and burritos and tostitos and tostadas. But there is so much richness in our cuisine. And so I love this article. I think it takes, again, a lot of self awareness to put out an article about things that annoy your own people. If you were to ask me as a Mexican national man what I think are the things that might annoy you the most of us Mexicans, I would think that you are annoyed by the fact that we don't speak English everywhere you go. I think you might be annoyed by the fact that our definition of time is different and somewhat more flexible. You know, all those mañana jokes, which can also be kind of annoying if you ask me. But the truth is, for better or worse, our management of time is different than it is elsewhere. And I would think that it might annoy you how some Mexicans can be filthy. And I think this is annoying to us Mexicans as well. Some people in Mexico do not have um, the awareness of garbage management and we see that some foreigners have in your countries of origin. We see this a lot during our own national holiday periods. Yes, Mexicans are messy, and this is unfortunate. And I'm just curious about your comments in general, not only about what Bethany Platanella wrote, but also what your comments are in terms of what we say or do, we Mexicans, that annoy you. Again, I won't be offended by your comments. I will not get ugly, and I'll be very amused just by all these perceptions and realities. Let's turn it over to you and your comments just to see what we have. Starting with your good mornings and afternoons, which I love. I always love them. Purum pum pim. Good morning, good morning, good morning. You met Dora. Oh, I like Dora. Betsy says, I love the artificial intelligence poem. It's fun to ask AI to make poems when you give AI some information. Betsy is giggling at Dora too. Albert thinks Dora is adorable. I promise I won't Dora you away. And of course, Logan received a Dora birthday poem, and so did another friend of mine. Let's see what else we have. And I already know that Brian liked his Dora poem as well. Let's see. Doo-dee-doo-doo-doo. Give Dora your voice so we all can feel like we have funny brownies. Well, if you must know, that was my voice. I just manipulated it digitally, not to get into the geekiness of how Dora came to life. I first recorded Dora's poem with my own voice, and then I had a little software program that I have here that turned Dora into her own voice. Here's an interesting question. Are Canadians included in Gringos? That's a good question, because if your question is related to the article that we mentioned, the answer would be yes, only because the American writer said, well, you Canadians and other speaking folks, English speaking folks should pay attention to this as well. In Mexico, Gringos traditionally refer to Americans, and the word comes from the word green because it means verde, and this has to do with the fact that the American soldiers used to wear green, and that's why we call them gringos. But generally speaking, when I get into an Uber, for example, and I ask an Uber a question about how your season is going, he might say, well, it's now summer and all the gringos are gone. The Uber driver is probably referring to the English-speaking community in general. This is a double-edged sword, as you can imagine, because, some Canadians may not be so keen on being thought of as gringos, and some gringos may not be so keen on being thought of as Canadians, but that is for you to resolve on your own. As far as us Mexicans are concerned, gringo does tend to refer to anybody that speaks English that is here, and that is unfortunate, in my opinion. Let's see. Oh no, Betsy and Albert are heading for the dentist. How terrifying. Let's see. What? Oh, there's a strange message there that I think is, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to ignore it. Congratulations to Verde for taking it all down. They were in my hood downtown taking it off. Michael, isn't that amazing and unprecedented? If the other parties have done so in the past. Well, how unfortunate that their communication department did not toot their own horn about that, and even my hand came out to become involved. Um, Logan comments on the Medina Ascencio stuff. That's going to be a muddy, sloppy traffic jam mess all summer, but we are so looking forward to the new shiny bike lane on the east side, northbound of Avenida Medina Ascencio. This is true. Muffin on the move will have more places to go look at people as he rides his bicycle. And Carmen, oh, I love you, Carmen. She says, that should be fun. What annoys U.S. citizens that Mexicans do and vice versa? Well, I'm just going through the comments. I know you've read them all before, but I'm going through them as they appeared. Thank you for that comment on yesterday's Spotlight, Joe. Again, we're nursing our little project little by little, and it's taking shape, and I'm getting very happy with the direction it is taking. Carmen asks, what will they do with the electoral trash? Well, hopefully they will turn it into recyclables. We know that there are a number of people that can transform all those banners into shopping bags and this, that, and the other. Hopefully we will learn more details about that. Kathleen has to disagree. I was told many years ago that it was meant to be related to Americans and didn't include Canadians. Well, I hate to disagree and not disagree with you. Again, the phrase originally meant Americans, and specifically American soldiers. Today, I think it relates, at least here in Puerto Vallarta, we think of the phrase as relating to English-speaking folk. I personally tend to use it only when I refer to Americans, and use it sparingly because some Americans might think that it is an offensive word, and it can be offensive depending on the context. Here, of course, I'm saying gringo, and I'm not saying anything despective. If I start cursing and get angry and start waving my hands and start complaining about the pinche blank, then it might not be a nice thing to call an American. Just as it wouldn't be nice to start calling the pinche gays or the pinche whatever. Let's see what else we have. Carmen throws another way to look at it. Gringos are only from the United States. Güeros are all white foreigners. This is true. Sometimes we call güero. We call English-speaking folks güeros, with the assumption that all English-speaking people have light skin and have blonde hair, which is also not true. So there you have it. Not all Mexicans look like Mexicans, and not all gringos look like they're blonde. Let's see. There's cues. I love it. This is going to take some time. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. Logan says, correctamundo, and from what I was told, the root of the word comes from the Mexican-American War and the color of the military uniforms. Correct. Gringo. I don't think it's gringo. It's us Mexicans just adding something at the end of the word to make it more pronounceable. For example, in northern towns, border towns in the south of Texas, you don't take a right, you take a raita. You don't take a left, you take a lefta. And that is the way Mexicans living in the border towns explain how to go from one place to another. It's like, how do I drive here? Date una vuelta para la raita, y luego vete derecho, y luego 3 cuadras, date una vuelta para la lefta. And it's just the way people usually talk. Oh, how sweet. Just wanted to come in late so I could say, Paco, your spotlight yesterday was fantastic and the best yet. Dale is amazing and you gave us a wonderful interview. Well, I have to thank Dale for being so forthcoming of information, and I seriously hope she will inspire others to get involved, because getting involved in all these volunteer pursuits will give you a clearer, broader view of what life in Mexico is about. I mean, Dale spoke about spending a lot of time in women's prisons, bringing things to women. That is courageous, and that is amazing. And I have an itchy beard, and I'm going to scratch it. So there. And you need a sound effect for that. Let's do one of this. No, we don't want that. I just stopped my happy music. That's not what I meant to do. I tell you. Um, let's see what else we have. Can I start the happy music again? I cannot. How silly. Let's see what else we have. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, yes. It is weird to me when a USA person refers to their country as America. Señores, America is a whole continent. We are all Americans here. In fact, this is a very good point. I'm not even going to touch that one because it is very annoying that Mexico has a name and the United States of America is the United States of America, but that does not mean that you're the only Americans in the picture. Let's see. I tip 20% also, the same as I do in Toronto. Why should it be different? I have a very easy question for that. Again, Kathleen, when you tip the same as you tip at home, are you taking into consideration the difference in economy and the difference in expectations and the potential outcome of that? And I think the difference is not so much between 15 and 20% in a tip, although I must say that 15 and 20% in a tip can be the difference for some Mexicans as to whether they will eat the next day or not. But I think the point that the writer was trying to make here is if you double your cleaning person's salary because you think you're paying peanuts, then you are good for you, but one way or another, you're throwing the economy off balance. And again, I'm not going to agree or disagree with this. I'm just throwing this information into context so that you can make of it whatever you choose to make of it. Marco Antonio says there is no reason why you need to tip 20%. 15% is more than enough and gives you a great service. I respect that, but you know, for me, that I'm reading that, and I know that's not what you mean, but for me that reads as saying there's no need to be more kind than you are. For me personally, again, this is my own personal opinion, kindness has no boundaries. If I choose to be kinder to someone, that's my choice. If I choose to acknowledge good service with a bigger tip or a gift, that's my choice. Just make sure that you're being fair in what you're doing and that you're keeping the outcome of your choice in context. And that's just my reaction to that comment. But again, there are a lot of people that tip 15% and they think that is the standard. That's okay too. Let's see. Burritos de machaca are the best. Oh my God, yes. But tell me, where do you find a great burrito de machaca, Michael? Because I know where to find a great burrito de marlin. And I'm curious about burritos de machaca. Kathy says, as a Canadian, I am envious of Mexican culture. What is my culture? Hockey, politeness, and saying sorry. Oh, and Tim Hortons. Oh my goodness, how do I? You know, Kathy, I've never been to Canada, but I think there has to be a lot more to Canadian culture than that. Not having been in Canada, Canada has great artistry. Canada has great artists, great symphony orchestras. Um, I refuse to believe that any culture is simply the basic stereotypes. For me to agree with you, um, would be to dismiss everything else. Mind you, I will be the first person to say that I think it took me being 20 years outside of my own country to truly appreciate all the wonderful heritage and culture that Mexico brings to the table. I wonder, Kathy, if what happens here is that when we are always surrounded by what is makes us our own culture, it's easy to take it for granted. So I'm not going to agree or disagree with you, but I'm going to say I'm sure that there's a lot more to being Canadian, and I have no idea what Tim Hortons is. Um, but my favorite opera conductor these days is from Canada. My a great Charles Dutoit was Canadian. It was another great orchestra conductor. Is Canadian. Um, isn't Katie Lang from Canada? I think Katie Lang is Canadian. Um, so what do I know? What do I know? Interesting comment though. I'm loving this. Let's see. As a PSA, just check labels when buying chorizo. I was so looking forward this morning with my eggs with chorizo, and then realized the chorizo I got was vegan, zero meat chorizo, no juice or oils to soak up with my tortilla. That is a good PSA. Thank you very much for that. There's so many varieties of chorizo out there. Let's see what else. Generally, I found nationals are so much kinder than Americans and Canadians. It's disconcerting when I hear people make condescending remarks about people from here. Interesting. I'm that's not for me to agree or disagree. It's an interesting observation. Let's see what else. There's a queue. Call me gringo or anything else. We have so much to learn from the locals. I love Puerto Vallarta. How about I call you David? I think it is, whenever we are in a different culture, it is up to us to choose to learn from it or choose to live on its edge. But the way I look at it and the way I've encouraged my friends is the more you immerse yourself in the local culture, the richer your life becomes. Do, 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 do. Individuals that don't tip should stay home. Yeah, absolutely. Although it's not required by law. It is really important to remember that, because there's something to be said also about restaurants that add the tip without checking with you. They add the tip to the bill. That is against the law. So it is important to be mindful of that. Kathy is just being facetious. Kathy, by this point, I have forgotten what your comment was, for better or for worse. You were the one that made the comment of Mexican culture and stuff like that. I see what you're saying. It is so difficult sometimes to read facetiousness in your comments. So, so please forgive me if I don't see it as a facetious. Oh God, that word is a bitch. I take your words as I read them, so I don't. It's difficult to understand that kind of subtle humor when you're reacting to it in this context. So it is what it is. Let's see. Okay. Thank you for a burrito recommendation. Casa de Guadalajara en Fluvial for breakfast or early lunch. Huge portion and great price. I'd like Casa de Guadalajara before the live music begins, because the live music is so fucking loud. Oops. that you cannot have a conversation. There you go. I said it. Canadian culture is rich and varied. I love both Mexican and Canadian culture. In fact, cultures from many countries are fascinating. Thank you for that, Barbara. And thank you for not being facetious. Let's see what else. This discussion is an entire broadcast. Absolutely. Oh my God, it's 11:20. And some of you are still here. Well, I thought it was an interesting topic. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Clearly, some of you did because there's still 30 of you watching. So let's wrap it up. Thank you about that. I mean, sorry about that. I didn't mean to get so wrapped up in the conversation, but I am fascinated about the way we interact in Puerto Vallarta as this multiple international soup of cultures. And that is what we have for today. And the sound effects have come back. Yay. Or rather, the silly music has come back. And now, time to get going. Time to wrap up Music Appreciation Presentation. Time to wish you a cool afternoon. Thank you very much for sticking around. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.